Welcome to October 18th. It's the midweek update for VIRE Business News Network Global. We've got a mixed bag of news. There's some positive, some negative. That's kind of what we expected right now thus far. Retail sales rose 0.7%, which beat the estimate of 0.3% for September. And people are pointing out to that being the strength of the consumer demand. Things are looking better retail. But, the counter to that argument is that inflation is just running high, and it has gone high for quite some time. And we see that in September, inflation reared its ugly head yet again. So was that, sales income rate higher just simply because of inflation? Hard to tell. But either way, we see that industrial production was better off, as well as manufacturing. So capacity utilization rose inching closer to the 80 mark, and that suggests that inflation is possibly a problem as well. And we see that the housing market index fell, which is also not surprising and a very weak sign. On the good side, though, up till now, about 20 or so companies have reported their earnings, and 88% of them have beaten the estimates. Now, that being said, that's good and bad news because everyone revised estimates lower, but still, everyone was being very cautious and very conservative, and they've beaten that. So once again, it's pointing towards this, future recession or things looking gloomy for the next year. It's giving us a good sense as to this kind of homeostasis that we're kind of sitting in and people are waiting for. And certainly the Richmond Fed president said, Tommy Barkin is his name, he reinforces that there is time to work things out because people are trying to figure out, are they going to keep going? Are they going to keep pushing rates up ahead, or are we going to stay flat? What's the look? We've done some video before talking about some of the views out there. I suggest things are going to creep further ahead. There's more pain to be taken. That's certainly a negative for most people, but I just don't see any other way. And once again, the U.S. is a bit more buoyed by this to some degree if you take out credit card debt. But it had locked in longer term 30-year mortgages in the last 2 or 3 years at least. That gives some people some protection as far as rates go. But let's move into some stock news as ASML Holdings post a lower mixed third quarter earnings results. Now, they're a Netherlands-based chip maker, and that basically follows because of the restrictions placed on semiconductors exporting to China. And this is part of the battle that's going on. And we're going to see this as being constant news flow between China and the U.S. I'm of the case that one needs to decouple a bit more from China. Of course, keep trade open. But if you don't create a stable network of demand for these critical manufacturing pieces and also the critical metals to make all of these things, you're going to be at the whim of a country that you don't want to be at the whim to. Right now, that's kind of what we're facing. China does kind of control a lot of the certainly future energy in regards to metals and mining. So we also saw this past day basically that oil prices have surged. Once again, not terribly surprising as we see the conflict in the Middle East, and quite frankly, war, as Israel has stated, in the Middle East is spreading. There's lots of propaganda back and forth. I'm sure everyone sees it on YouTube, on every social media platform, regardless of what you're on that spectrum. This is going to cause a lot of chaos in the West, in the Middle East, and certainly for energy prices. On top of that, causing more kind of drama and unease is President Xi Jinping coming out in support of Hamas, which is a tough position to take in regards to the event that occurred, and certainly on the world stage shows further tensions. And he just also greeted his friend and ally, President Vladimir Putin, who arrived in Beijing. And there they were talking about the One Belt, One Road initiative and also their support for each other, their trust, and also their no limits partnership between the countries, even as the Ukraine war carries on and as sides are being kind of positioned in regards to Israel and Palestine. So amongst that as well, we see that Chinese President Xi Jinping also is criticizing the West in total, not just the Biden administration, for trying to not depend on the Chinese economy quite as much. Now, once again, we try to keep out too much of the political stuff, but I think nowadays more than ever, politics is what's going to drive a lot of the main moves here, because as we decouple and as BRICS gain strength, and as the U.S. maybe isn't the default currency and the default economy, we're going to see more and more chaos and more picking of sides, and that's going to be an issue. So this Belt and Road Initiative, launched 10 years ago, it looks to build infrastructure and energy networks throughout all Asia, heading to Africa and Europe, not only along land routes, but along the maritime routes. And he's quoted as saying, these blueprints have turned into real projects. And as of Wednesday, at the close of this next 10-year future projection forum, they'd $97.2 billion worth of cooperation projects were signed. Now, could be a lot more than that. It's they're not announcing all of them, but certainly a notable and interesting one is the Afghan Taliban administration saying China has more interest right now in developing Afghanistan, so we are more engaged with China. The Chinese have more interest in economic affairs. That's why we're here. We've heard this as well from Africa, that when they were saying the Biden administration comes in, they want to talk about gender ideology and not about infrastructure, not about energy, not about any of the things that would be necessary to help build an economy out. Very strange messaging to take to countries, especially in this environment we're facing. Now, of course, a lot of critics will point to China's infrastructure lending, that they're really trying to load up a lot of these poor nations with loans they can't repay. They can come in and take the assets, confiscate, you name it, or put more heavier penalties upon them. We see even Indonesia President Joko Widodo, that country owes China more than 20 billion, has emphasized in a speech that the BRI projects must not complicate fiscal conditions. And we're running into higher interest rates everywhere. I can only see that being more of a problem than anything else at this point. Kind of wrap things up, two very interesting things too. Gold has rallied to a 1-month high at $1,943.90, which is good for all those gold bugs out there. There's lots of people encouraged by that and looking, as things become more unstable, to what gold will do over the next short term. Now, another interesting story, which is a bit of off that path as well, as the United States government has become one of the largest Bitcoin holders, with over 200,000 Bitcoin worth about $5 billion. That's actually an incredible amount. So according to data filed on public filings, crypto firm 21.co estimated the U.S. government still holds about 194,188 Bitcoin. And they've posted this chart here. And some of that comes, or a significant amount might come from the U.S. law enforcement confiscating Bitcoin from different organizations, from the Silk Road and whatnot. And we see a couple articles out there, if you have further interest, to follow that up on how they put that at auction, or even when they go into the open market just to sell it. But it is interesting that they have that position. And I mean, if you are confiscating it, why wouldn't you sell it and take some cash for it? So there's nothing conspiratorial about that. But if they're holding it, well, that's an interesting aspect that one needs to look at too. So let's wrap up for the week. A couple of interesting stories, developments, kind of progressing as we think and as we thought. Certainly a lot of chaos out there. Tune in next week and we'll look at this midweek update and keep you up to speed.